Hey everyone, today we are making these clear vinyl lanyard pouches. They are a single pocket zipper closure pouch that you can use to keep your phone or other essentials in. If you're out at a theme park, the clear vinyl means that they are I want to say resistant, not waterproof, because you still have the zipper with the openings a little bit at either end, but definitely good for protecting water vulnerable items. You can slide it under your shirt to keep things close to you and safe. The PVC is good because you can actually, your phone screen will respond through the PVC. At least my iPhone does, so that's handy. I have made this for an upcoming cruise that I am going on. I'm hoping to put also my CPAS through this, so we'll have my main pouch that I can keep my phone in, and then my CPAS on the front using the same lanyard for both. So I think that should be super handy. So I've been playing around with the size a little bit. This obviously can be made any size that you want. I will go ahead and show you the measurements that I like. If you have a larger phone, you might want to do it a little bit bigger. I use a single piece for the main pocket, and then the extra bits for the zipper tab and the D-ring tab at the top there. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we need today. The things that we will need today are your clear vinyl, a zipper. I am using a zipper that is pre-made. You want your zipper to be about the same length as the finished pouch. So mine is it has 8 inches of teeth, which will be plenty. You can use zipper by the yard. You can use a longer zipper and cut it down. You will need a D-ring. If you are making your own lanyard and not using a store-bought lanyard, you will need a swivel hook and also your material for your lanyard. I am using a piece that is 36 inches long and 3 inches wide, which is 4 times the inner width of my swivel hook. You can use a store-bought one, that's totally fine, but I will show you how to make it yourself. You can use rivets optionally, or you can sew in the place of rivets. You will obviously need your cutting tools, your ruler. I like to use a stapler, the pliers for removing staples, and also something to melt your threads with at the end. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is cut our main piece of vinyl. The way that this pouch is oriented, you can use a directional print and still use a single piece. I like to cut mine 8.5 inches tall by 9 inches wide. As I said earlier, if you have a bigger phone or you have different use in mind for your pouch, you can cut it slightly bigger or smaller, I guess, if you have a small phone. But the size that I like is 8.5 inches tall and 9 inches wide. So the beauty of this PVC vinyl is that you can see through it to your lines. So let me get that cut. You can also, if you wanted to, use regular vinyl for this. That would also work. So we're just going to measure 8.5 inches tall by 9 inches. And I'm also going to cut a piece that is 2 inches long and 3/4 of an inch wide. I'm using a 3/4 of an inch D-ring for my pouch. If you're using a different size D-ring, then you want your connector piece to be the same width as the inside. So mine is 3/4, and I like 2 inches long. And I'm also going to cut a small piece to use as my zipper end. I like that to be about 1.5 inches wide, and then somewhere between 3/4 of an inch and 1 inch tall. It only needs to be folded in half. It doesn't need to be folded double fold. Our materials are now ready to go. We have our exterior main piece, our zipper tab, and our D-ring connector. I'm going to slide the D-ring and the D-ring connector aside for now, and we're going to pop our zipper on. If you have double-sided tape, I find this is very helpful for this zipper installation. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I use double-sided tape a lot. I'm going to grab the double-sided tape, and I'm going to start 1/2 inch from this end and go to 1/2 inch from the other end. And this is along the sides. The top is going to have a seam closed, and we're going to be putting a zipper here. The next thing that we're going to do is put our tab on the end of this zipper. What I like to do is snip the zipper here just in front of where that zipper stop is at the end, and then put the tab on. Fold the tab in half. It only needs to be folded once. I'm going to pop that on the end, and I'm going to head over to the machine, and I'm just going to sew that little bit right there at the end so that we can start getting it put into place on our exterior. Now we've got our zipper and tab on here. We're going to go ahead and pop the zipper on. Normally, I like to start from the front when I am sewing with the zipper end here and install that side first. But because of the way we are top stitching this zipper pouch, I'm going to do it the other way. So we're going to start zipper tab on this end and go up. If you are using a directional print, then you're going to want the opening to be pointing upwards. So double-sided tape. I'm going to put the end of your zipper tab at the 1/2 inch mark. You can mark it on your vinyl, or you can use your cutting mat as a guide. We'll press that down onto the double-sided tape, and then I'm going to grab a pen and I'm going to mark 5/8 on the zipper tape. I'm going to mark that on both sides of the zipper tape. And then I'm going to transfer this marking here to the front, so I can see where my mark is here, and I'm just going to put it onto the front. Now we are going to go over to the machine, and we're going to be sewing down here till we get to this mark. Then we are going to open up our zipper. We're going to turn the tape 90 degrees, and we're going to get a little fold in the zipper tape here, and then that's going to get pressed down onto the top. We're going to sew over the teeth, back, and then we're going to sew down next to the teeth, come back up here, and then sew that fold down flat also, and that's where we're going to end. So let's head over to the machine and do that now. I like to change to my zipper foot for this step so that I can get a uniform seam allowance there and get nice and close to the zipper. I am using my zipper foot width as my guide here. So I'm going to have this edge of the zipper foot lining up with the zipper here as we sew. I'm using a size 3 stitch length, which is slightly longer than I would usually use for construction, but because it's the clear vinyl, it has more of a tendency to tear through the stitch holes, so we want those holes to be slightly further apart, so it's not just like a perforation. A couple of stitches forward, back stitch just to the end of the tab, and then going all the way until we get to that mark that we made earlier on the zipper. Slow down here, slide the zipper pull back, raise your presser foot with the needle down to get it past if you need to. Holding that tape in place, continuing up, check where your mark is, then with the needle down, press the foot up, turn your tape and make that fold. You can use a stiletto if you need to help the crease form. Drop your presser foot back down, one stitch over the end, then back. Now we're going to turn the entire project towards us, and holding that tail in place, press that down with the finger or with your stiletto. Drop the foot again, and we're just going to sew a line here next to that zipper. And then back, being careful if you're using a pre-made zipper not to hit that metal zipper stop. Then we turn it 45 degrees, and then we're going to sew down that fold there. Now, your machine might have trouble getting over that zipper, so if you need to, raise your presser foot and just move it forward a little bit manually. Hand crank it if you need to, and then a couple of stitches back and forth to hold that in place. Pop it off, pull your threads tight. We are going to clip this here and melt that, and then we're going to fold this tape under and we're going to top stitch it before we join the other side. Now we're going to fold the zipper tape under, crease it along here, and then we're going to top stitch along the edge of the zipper there. I am going to switch back to my Teflon foot so that I can have the foot that's easier for the sticky vinyl, and I like to use the edge of the Teflon foot to get a nice even top stitch. Make sure your threads are long at the back and hold those as you get started. Changing to a 4 for my stitch length. And just back stitch. Just pressing down on this vinyl as I go, because it wants to roll back under there. Slide your zipper pull out of the way as you get to it. And then lift your presser foot, turn your project, slide your zipper pull back, keep sewing the rest of the way. Back stitching again, raise the needle, hold your threads tight, and there's the top stitching on the first side. We're now going to attach the other side of the zipper. Pull your zipper tape closed and peel off the double-sided tape on the other side, and then line up the bottom edge of your main piece and the zipper tape on the side. Press that down onto the double-sided tape. All the way along. When we go over to the machine, we're going to be sewing with the vinyl side up. I like to sew from the closed end to the open end because of the way that we do the end of the zipper on the open end. So this mark that we made earlier, we're going to transfer to the front. And it should line up with the other one when we turn it. So let's head back over to the sewing machine. I've switched back to my zipper foot for doing this side of the zipper. Normally I like to do both sides of the zipper at the same time so that I'm not changing the foot over and over again. But for this project, because we're using one exterior piece, when we top stitch the second side of the zipper, we're going to kind of be doing it in a bit of a tube shape, and it is easier to top stitch before you sew the second side on for the side that we've already done. So set it back to a 3 for the stitch length, and just looking to see where the end of your tab is. Even though it's underneath, you can still see where the end of that is. A couple of stitches forward, back again, and then down this side all the way to where that mark is, and then we're going to turn out our zipper tape. Reach in, slide your pull out of the way, lift your presser foot if you need to get it past. Can get a little tricky in there, it's still getting a little snug. There we go, got it out of the way. Put that presser foot down again. Make sure that your tape didn't come unstuck like mine did. When we get to that mark, one more stitch. If it's not exact, you can raise your presser foot and then lower it back down, back in the correct spot, to make sure that you get the turns at an even position. Then raise your presser foot, turn the end of that tape out again, creating that fold. Drop the presser foot, one stitch over the end, then back again. Raise the presser foot, turn your project. You can check your fold there underneath before we sew it. Drop the presser foot again, sewing next to the teeth, catching the end of that fold, back up to your stitch line, turn it 45 degrees, and then we're going back over the curve. Sorry, the fold. And back stitch there. Pull your threads tight. You can see. Let me get that into the light properly for you. Well, we've sewn that there. We're going to secure those threads, cut this end of the tape and melt that, and then we're going to come back and top stitch this side of the zipper. When we head back over to the machine, we're going to be top stitching this side of the zipper. Because it's closed at this end, we can't open it right out because it's got no seam at the bottom. It gets a little tricky when we get down to this closed end, which is why we started on this side first. So I'm just going to fold that under. And when we get over to the machine, we start at this end. We're going to sew down as far as we can, and then we're going to really have to try to pull this back to get all the way to that end. If you find that that's too difficult, you can put your needle down, take some long threads and take it off the machine, and then you can start it back again from the inside in here to finish off that last little bit. I've switched back to my Teflon foot and I'm back at a 4 for my stitch length. Keeping that folded under, starting right at the open end, right at the edge of the vinyl. Hand crank to get it going, back stitch, and then just coming along the edge of that vinyl, making sure it's folded under. And I like to line the inside edge of my presser foot up with this edge of the vinyl to get a nice straight top stitch. And you can see here as we come up to this is the bit that gets a little bit tricky as far as the top stitching because we've got it in the tube shape. So we just fold that over. And then try to pull this out of the way as much as we can. The smaller the project, the trickier this is to do. So you can keep going all the way down. You can fold it around. It is tricky, so you can manipulate that clear vinyl as much as you need to try to get to those last little bits of the top stitching. So you can see there, we're going to be sewing it through that little tunnel there. That is why we started on the other side and we top stitched the first side before we put the zipper on this side. Okay, so it just gets a little trickier the closer you get. So you can continue down to get through there if you want to fight with your vinyl. What I'm going to show you is a different way to do it. So raise your needle without back stitching and pull a long tail off. Cut those threads, and then you're going to pull that top thread through. So now you have a long tail on the inside there. Then pull your zipper up a bit, and we're going to come back at it from this way. So you're going to slide the project back under your machine. Keep your tails back as best you can. Slide it under. It's still a little tight. What you want to do is slide it back so that your presser foot lines up with where you just lifted it off. Still with the long tail. Drop your presser foot down, and you want to line your needle up with where you just finished sewing. So you pop that needle back down. Again, no back stitching. Go forward. The threads, just pull those to the side so that they don't get tangled up. And then we can continue to the end of the material that way. Now that we're back at the very end, you can back stitch. Take that off the machine. Then going back to where the threads are, we want to pull the top thread from the second row of stitches through so that you will have 4 threads on the back. Then we're going to tie them off and tuck them in underneath the zipper tape. It's a little tricky to do over there, so tying these threads off, and then I like to take a needle, tuck it into the zipper tape and back out again. Take the long tails that we've just knotted together, and we're just going to tuck those threads in. And then we're just going to finish those off. You can snip or you can melt. And then if we open that zipper back up, you can see where the top stitching has continued along. So you can see we've got the top stitching on both sides of the zipper now, and you can't really tell too much where we stopped and started our sewing. That just makes it a little easier than having to sew all the way to the end in the tube. So now I get to turn this back out the wrong way, and then we can pop our D-ring on and sew up the top and bottom. Then we will be done with the zipper pouch portion. The next thing that we're going to do is put our D-ring into position before we sew the top and the bottom. You're going to want to zip your zipper up. For now, we're going to have to open that again before we sew the top and the bottom. We're just going to close it up so that we can mark where we want our D-ring to go. So pop your D-ring connector on your D-ring, fold it in half there. You can pop a clip in that to keep it in place. Then we need to mark the center position for our D-ring. You can, if you choose, pop it on the end here if you want your lanyard pouch to hang that way. I like to try to center mine. You want to mark your center from the fold here and where the zipper is here. If you do it from this edge, it is going to be slightly off from the center. So if I look at mine, it is a little more than 4 1/4 inches wide, which means that my center point is going to be at about 2 1/8. So that would be right there. Just going to mark that on there. And then grab my D-ring And I like to leave about 1/4 of an inch hanging off the edge here so that any stress on those stitches there is less likely to pull the entire tab out. So closing that back up and making sure the ends are lined up. Just pop the clip in there, holding that in place. Make sure that that's right, that's right. Then you can just check. So that's 1 3/4 from that end, and from the zipper tape to the edge here, it's about 1 3/4 again. So I'm happy with that. I like to pop a staple in just to keep that tab in position. Now I'm going to open this zipper back up. Stick my hand in there. Stapler again, lining up this end of the pouch, folding the tab to keep it into place, and I pop another staple within the seam allowance at that end, slide it to the curve, and then pop a clip about there, repeat on the top, lining up the edges. At this point, I like to flatten the pouch out to make sure that the shape of the pouch is not skewed. So you can see here, the end is just ever so slightly longer, but that's the way that the pouch wants to sit. So rather than force that and have the finished product be a little skewed, I'm going to just staple that. Okay, staple in seam allowance. Then pop another clip at the end there. Then I'm going to go over to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew this end and this end. I like to start at the open end and sew towards the curve. And I'm going to be using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I've switched back to my zipper foot so that I can get closer to the zipper tab on this end and the zipper teeth on the other end. And I'm using a 3 for my stitch length, and I'm actually starting on the project a little bit. I'm going to stitch, then back stitch all the way to the end of the vinyl. It's got a little bit of bulk there, so we just make sure the machine is happy. If you need to lift it and hand crank it just to get it over the bulk there, then continue all the way to the end. Back stitch at the end. Pull the threads tight, and then we will repeat at the other end. I like to go back over where the D-ring connector is. All the way to the end, back stitch, and pull your threads tight. Now what we need to do is go and pull out any of our staples and secure all of our threads. The last thing that we need to do for the zipper pouch part of this tutorial is turn it out. Grab a pair of scissors. We're going to snip these corners here. I like to cut them about 60 degrees. I find 45 is not quite enough to get a nice neat corner when you turn. Be very careful not to cut into your stitches or past this curve here. So we're just snipping in the seam allowance, like so. Same on the other side. And now we can turn it. It is easier to turn using heat. I'm just going to do this as is today. But you can use your hair dryer. The heat will also help get your corners nice and neatly poked out. I'm just going to grab a chopstick and just poke those corners out a bit more. The clear vinyl does tend to roll on you. So what I also like to do is really roll those seams out. You can apply heat to it as well. But I like to close it up and then get some weight on there. I actually like to stick it in my cold heat press with some Teflon sheet just to protect it, even though it's cold. Just to really squish those seams out. So there we have the zipper pouch part complete. If you are not making your own lanyard, then you are done at this point. But I am going to show you how to sew up a lanyard quickly. For the lanyard, there are two possible ways that you can do it. You can do it the regular looped way, where you have your join hidden here in the inside, or you can do it with the safety release. So I will show you both of those options. You will need a swivel hook. You can use rivets, or you can just sew stitch lines in place of the rivets if you prefer. You will need a piece of fabric. I like to cut mine 34 to 36 inches long. Your size will depend on your preference for the length of your lanyard when you're wearing it. And the width of your fabric will be 4 times the inner width of your hardware that you're using. So for a 3-inch swivel, you're going to, sorry, a 3/4 of an inch swivel, you're going to want to be 3 inches. When you are doing it the safety release way, you're also going to want to fold over your lanyard material at the end, like that, so that there's no raw end showing. If you're not putting in the safety release, then the raw end's going to be hidden inside here, so you don't need to worry about that so much. The first thing that we need to do is prepare our material. If you are using a thinner fabric, you're going to want to add interfacing to it as well. I'm using canvas, so it's thick enough without any interfacing. If you're using a quilting weight cotton, then you're going to want to put on some woven interfacing. If you've made a crossbody strap, the way that we do this is quite similar to that. We're going to be folding the material in half long ways and press the entire piece. Then we're going to fold it to that center line and then fold it over again so that it's a total of 4 layers with the seams hidden in the middle. So I'm going to head over to my iron and I'm going to press that now. If you're going to be doing the safety, then you can fold in your ends here so that you don't have any raw ends showing. Just press that down. I folded in about 3/8 of an inch, and then I like to just tuck that in there a little bit so that it's not sticking out at the bottom. Fold that back over and then press that again. And you can see that there's no raw ends there. I'm going to repeat it on the other side. Okay. And now we are we're ready to go and sew our lanyard. I like to use a walking foot for sewing crossbody straps and lanyard straps so that they are less likely to get any twisting when you sew down one side and then back up the other side. I am using a stitch length of 4, and I have the needle set over towards the right hand side, and I'm using part of my zipper foot as my guide to get an even top stitch there. I'm starting at the, that's backwards. I'm starting at the open end of the strap, and I'm going to go down the open side of the lanyard piece first. If you're doing the safety style and you folded your ends in here, you sew your lanyard just the same way, starting at the end there, and then sewing down the open side first, and then all the way around. Sometimes you may need to increase your tension a little bit on these straps to get a better stitch on the bottom. Make sure that your needle is down when you turn at the corner. If you need to reposition to get your stitch line in a better spot, you can do that once you turn the corner. But you will get a sharper corner if you keep the needle down. And if the needle is down but kind of on the way back up when you turn, then you won't skip that corner stitch there. Then you can pull your threads through to one side, tie them in a knot, and then I like to tuck them back through into the fold there. I've got my 2 lanyard straps prepared, one with the raw end, one with the folded end. This is the one that's going to have the safety release, and this one is not. So let me start by showing you this version. The first thing you need to do is slide on your swivel hook. I like to keep the swivel hook facing towards the inside for now because we are going to eventually turn it. It's going to go back that way. Take your 2 raw pieces, and what you want to do here is put a single twist in the strap. The reason that you want to put this twist in the strap is so that it sits flat against your neck and flat against your chest. You can sew these in a regular loop like this, and if you do that, then you can actually sew it like I've done my wrist straps in one big loop and close your seams inside that way, but then the lanyard doesn't sit as flat against your body. So take your entire lanyard in the loop and then turn one end so that you have the open side and the closed side joined up like that, and then you know that you have your one twist in. Make sure it's just a single twist. Then what you're going to do is sew these ends together. I like to offset them slightly to reduce the bulk at the end. I like to grab a clip, keep that in place, and then I'm going to go over to the sewing machine and I'm just going to sew over the top of this stitch line. It's kind of tricky to see there. The stitch line that we did on the end there earlier. I'm just going to sew back over that and then bring it back over here to finish off the threads. I like to start and finish my stitch line in the middle there so that the threads are in the middle. So you can finish them off however you choose. I generally just pull them through and then tie a knot and then tuck the tail of that knotted thread bundle through between the 2 layers here. Now we have the lanyard sewn in the loop with a single twist in it. We're going to position our swivel hook. So you want to turn your lanyard around so that your seam here is on the outside of the loop. Grab your swivel and slide it down. You can choose how you want to position your swivel with the ends of your lanyard strap there. I like to wedge mine in there between the layers. You can see here where we've offset the ends to reduce the bulk in there. So you can just squeeze that in there. Now you can set that with a rivet here or a stitch line there. And I also like to pop another rivet or stitch line about 2 inches further up, or 1.5 inches further up, just to keep that together a little further away from the end of the lanyard so that it's further up when it starts to separate like that. But that is entirely personal preference. I'm going to use rivets for this one. I will do a stitch line on the other one. So I'm going to punch a hole here and another one here, and I'm going to go and set those 2 rivets right there. So that is the enclosed seam version without the safety complete. Now I will show you how we pop the safety release on the lanyard. If you prefer that style, put that one out of the way. For this one, first we put the swivel on. I prefer not to put it in the middle because I like to have the safety offset over my shoulder rather than at the back of my neck. So first we're going to secure that swivel. You can use the rivets as I just showed you with this version. Put one there and there, or just one, or wherever you choose. I'm going to put in a stitch line on this version just to show you the different way to do it. So I'm going to sew a line here and a line here, and then we will put on the safety. Starting in the middle, making sure your threads are long and tight so that you don't get looping. Just going to sew across the strap, back and forth. I like to get right over the edge on at least one pass. Pull the threads tight there. And then another row of stitches 1.5 inches to 2 inches further up. And then I'm going to secure those threads, and then we will put on the safety release. The same way that we did with the other version of the lanyard, we want to put a twist in this so that it sits flat against your neck. The way that we're going to do that is by turning the strap here so that the curve is up before we pop it onto the safety connector. This side of the connector can go either way, so that isn't really a great concern. You can always flip it if you don't have the twist in there. However, you are going to have your fold on the outside if you don't pay attention to the way that you put it on now. I'm going to slide that through the gap. It's a little bulky because we folded over the ends there. Just work it through. I start from the closed end. Just wiggle it until we get it through. So we've got that side on. I saved you a lot of my struggle there. Now it looks like it's incorrect here because if you look at your lanyard strap, it's folded to the outside, but that's because this is where the twist is going to be. So pop the connector piece on, fold it out, pop a clip on, and then we're going to just pop the other end in. Hopefully this one goes in a little easier, but I don't like my chances. So something to consider here is if you want this circle to be on the inside or the outside. It doesn't affect functionality, but it can affect the aesthetic. So I'm going to try to position it so that it's on the inside. And I'll just work away at getting this bulky end through. If you've used quilt cotton, yours may not be as bulky as mine is with the canvas. If you have used quilt cotton, something that I should have said regarding the interfacing is you can leave it off the last 1/2 inch, and then that will make for a much less bulky end when you are folding it over. So just bear with me while I fight with this for a minute. All right, so this one's going to fold this way inwards. Grab another clip, and then before we sew it, we can check it. So it's gonna look like this. That is when it is not twisted to sit flat against your body. So when it does have the single twist in it, then it'll clip in like that, which has the circle facing in, which is what we want, and the folds facing in. So I'm happy that that is correct. I'm going to go and sew the end here and the end here, and then this version will also be complete. So that there is both versions of the lanyards done. I will say that this end here, where I was sewing over that, that's about 12 layers of canvas here. If you sew on a domestic machine like I do, that is about the limit of what I can ever do on that machine. You may have heard it struggling even as I was hand cranking there. And that's why I often like to use rivets. So if you are not interested in the market for, if you don't have the space for an industrial machine and you are interested in doing more bag making, I suggest looking into rivets. That is what I use for a lot of my straps and things that are bulkier, because my machine simply can't handle all of those layers. So that's just something to consider there. So let me grab the pouches so we can just see how they look when they're on. So there's our pouch that we made earlier. Pop your lanyard on. And then that one is good to go. Grab another one that I've got over here. And then you just clip that onto your D-ring. And then they are ready to go. All right. Thanks, everyone. I hope that was helpful.